Welcome to Austin Tech Connect, the official podcast of the Austin Technology Council. Presented to you by Netspend. Homegrown in Austin, Netspend has been a leading provider of consumer and business payment solutions for almost 25 years. From prepaid cards to mobile bank accounts to money movement services, Netspend connects people, brands, and payment products to deliver innovative financial solutions.
Welcome to Austin Tech Connect, the podcast about the future of Austin's technology community. My name is Tom Singer, and I am the CEO of the Austin Technology Council. The ATC has been around 30 years as the voice of our growing technology community, and we are looking for you. If you are part of the Austin technology community, we want you to get engaged or get re-engaged with the Austin Technology Council because we can't build the future without your company. So every week on this podcast, we engage local leaders to hear their story of success and to get their advice on how we can all thrive. And this week, we are joined by Mike Staples. Mike is the general manager for Cruise for their Austin operations. Now, Cruise is an autonomous vehicle company, and we're going to learn a little bit about what they're doing, why they're in Austin, where they're going next, etc. But his background is in a lot of startups. He also spent some time at Amazon. He spent some time at Uber. And before that, he was in the military. He is a West Point graduate, and then he spent 8 years in the Army flying Black Hawk helicopters. I certainly don't think those were autonomous, right, Mike?
They were not.
So, and now he lives here in Austin. He's running Cruise's operation, and we're going to learn all about what they're doing. So, Mike Staples, welcome to Austin Tech Connect.
Tom, thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
So, Mike, let's start with you. I always love it when I find entrepreneurial people who come out of the military. There's a lot of them, both on this podcast and on my own show that I've done like 750 plus episodes. A lot of people are graduates of the academies or had other military experience. What is it about the military that sets people up to thrive in an entrepreneurial environment?
Yeah, great question, Tom. I think one of the biggest things that I gained out of the military, at least, was just the ability to adapt and overcome, a term you hear quite often depending on what service you're in. But it's pretty often that you switch roles within the military, right? Roughly every year, you might be in the command of a unit. You might be deploying somewhere and doing some new role. You might move to a new city or a new state and work with a completely new team. And by doing that over and over and over every year, you really quickly learn how to adapt and overcome. So that's probably the trait that I think makes those folks more entrepreneurial and able to thrive in those environments.
Nice. So when you get out of the service, sometimes that's a hard transition. I've talked to a lot of people who have served, and it's a hard transition going from sort of that insular world where everything is planned for you down to the minute details into the workforce. How was your transition?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'd say my transition wasn't great. I think I, like a lot of my peers that transitioned at the same time, I transitioned in mid-2015. There weren't a lot of processes set up to help folks like us that were leaving. Some very basic things. Show us your resume. Okay, good. You're great to head out in the civilian world. Good luck, right? Since then, there's been a lot of programs that have come out that are now assisting members in making that transition. And again, it's a big leap. You're living in this very insular world that is the military, right? Whether it's housing and food, your community, everyone you work with is all there within every new base you go to. So going back again, the transition was difficult, but there's a very, very strong support network of folks that have gotten out before you. So that was really positive.
So what was it? It wasn't perfect. What was that transition like then for you? What happened when it was okay? You're discharged. Here you go. What was your path?
Yeah. So I think going back a little bit, I think what made it more difficult was more culturally. I think at that point in time when you said, "Hey, first of all, if you were to mention to somebody, one of your superior leaders, hey, I'm thinking about getting out," like to have the confidence to say that was a pretty bold move. And usually the response you get from one of your leaders in the military is, "Why are you doing that?
Because they chose to
serve in your country."
Yeah, they chose to stay, so that's the right answer.
That's right. That's right. And you know what? It's like, I understand why I think people did that. You want people to stay in, you want to keep people there, you build it. But I think unfortunately it came a little bit of a cost of questioning people's morals like that. It made you feel bad. People make you feel bad about it. Oh, you're about to leave the military, you're about to leave this amazing organization. Like, why are you doing that to yourself and the country? Right. And I don't really like the way that was framed by a number of people. I think the narrative's changed over the years for the positive. I think now you're getting a lot more support, both internally and externally, which is really great. But for me personally, again, a little bit of an internal battle because I love the military. I really, and I'm I really am thankful for the military for literally everything I have. Met my wife in the military. We bought our first house together in the military. We traveled the world together in the military, deployed together in the military. So I really thank the military for everything that I have, for teaching me and giving me the basic tools that I need to be successful outside. But the transition was rough. So I've tried to pay that forward by helping and coaching other military members that are getting out, that are making the transition, letting them know it's not that bad. In fact, it's fantastic when you get out, and talking to them a lot about entrepreneurship and starting your own companies and jumping into companies that are different than your very standard industries are all things I love to talk to. Specifically for me, my transition from the military, once I made the actual out, looking for a job was pretty easy because I'd already pre-selected it. And what I mean by that is back in about 2009, 2010, I was in Korea for a couple of years there. And that was during the time where the economy wasn't doing so well. You had a lot of people struggling to find jobs. That's my peer group. A lot of them had graduated college are now struggling to find jobs. The housing market's not doing very well. A bunch of issues that came up. I'm watching the news from Korea, and I saw this company come out. It's Uber and Lyft sort of followed that said, hey, if you have a smartphone and a car, you can make money. And I thought that was so cool. The idea that literally you can just open up your phone and start making money. I thought that was so cool. Jobs out of thin air, right? So I followed the company for the next 4 years or so, 4 or 5 years when I first heard about them. And when I got out in 2015, I applied to one company and one company only, and that was Uber. I wanted to get out there. I wanted to create jobs by opening up this new simple way to transact. And I wanted to create a new form of transportation. And that was the idea that you no longer have to be in a public transportation or in the back of a taxi cab. You can be behind Tom's back seat, whatever the case might be. I thought that was super cool.
Nice. All right. So how long were you at Uber and where'd you go next?
I was at Uber for 3 years. At Uber, I was an operations manager. I launched cities from the East Coast to Central US, had an absolute blast. While at Uber, started our family. So life got a little bit busier there. And I also was lucky enough and fortunate enough to get my MBA while working full-time at Uber. So nice to be able to kind of round out my personal experience because, again, I'm coming straight from the military. I don't have any credentials, and I'm sitting alongside, McKinsey consultants and business analysts from, crazy, banks and stuff like that. So putting myself more with my peer group by getting some additional education and gaining a bunch of on-the-job experience. So after Uber, I moved to Amazon. Very, very different experience. Amazon was much more like the military than Uber was. And I was specifically in Amazon fulfillment, right? So we launched a new facility in Northern Virginia, had a blast getting through the launch. It's just pretty simple. Amazon's very different from Uber, but in both jobs, I was launching a city or launching a market. And so I realized between Uber and Amazon, I was like, I really like this launch stuff. I can jump into something new, learn from ground zero and build something to be incredible. And that's what I just fell in love with. So Uber to Amazon, did Amazon for a little while. And then I got poached from an old mentor of mine who pulled me in to be running my first role in a startup as an executive. And that's when I moved over to a company called Bond. Bond offered personal security as a service. The company's still around today. It's based out of New York, personal security as a service. And that was my first opportunity to lead something called customer success and marketplace operations. Marketplace was the launch arm of the company. And again, they offered this personal security as a service available via an app. We were based out of New York. We launched across the tri-state area and then eventually launched across the entire US. And that was my job, was leading that launch and making sure we had successful operations.
This episode is sponsored by Forward Security. Forward's highly accomplished team delivers application and cloud security solutions focusing on mid-size organizations in finance, e-commerce, and health. Their Eureka DevSecOps platform makes managing application and cloud security tools, processes, and issues simple and effective, while their Eureka DevSecOps service helps with achieving DevSecOps transformation goals. If you're a software provider looking to reduce risk, gain market share, and increase profitability and privacy, check them out at forwardsecurity.com, and we appreciate their support of this podcast. Nice. So let's fast forward over to Cruise. When did you join Cruise? When did you come to Austin to open up the Austin market? And let's hear what Cruise is doing. So when did you make the move to Cruise, and when did you come to Austin?
Sure. So I made the move to Cruise at the very beginning of this year. So beginning of January, I actually was lucky enough to get invited to the Cruise launch party, which was the middle of December of last year. At that point, I had gotten the offer and was very, very excited. So I got to see the launch party. It was really cool to see it from the other side of the table and then come into the company, the next month. So I've been with Cruise for about 5 months now. In terms of when I got to Austin, we got to Austin back in February 2020. If you remember when the big snowstorm came in, we were literally taking our goods off the truck as the snow started during the snowstorm. So we got everything off the truck. The snowstorm started. Our family in town lost power, so they came over. Everything's still in boxes. So it was a good chance for us to kind of pressure test the house, make sure it was going to work okay. But yeah, we've been here for about 2.5 years at this point.
Nice. All right. So Cruise opened up in the Austin market. Tell us a little bit about what Cruise is and why. I think they started in San Francisco. Why Austin as the second city that they came to?
Yeah, great question. So I think, Cruise, first of all, going back to SF, right? SF is one of the, if not the most difficult environment to drive in. So when Cruise first started to launch operations, they chose the most difficult place to go, right? SF has very busy streets. It's incredibly dense urban environment. Lots of people out there. You have lots of fog and rain and narrow streets and wide streets and high streets and low streets and different speeds and stuff like that.
Curvy, windy streets made of brick.
Very curvy, windy streets. Yes. So all these conditions led for us to get a ton of really, really, really good data working within the most difficult driving scenarios. As they were looking around, they looked at other markets. What markets are open innovation? What markets have maybe a little bit better weather? What markets have the other good conditions to, business conditions, a thriving business environment? And I think when you look at all these different markets across the United States, there's a number of them, right? The states, we're so lucky to be out here, but Texas specifically and Austin, a very cool kind of centralization of all those different components, right? And for the same reasons that brought me out to Austin, right? Those reasons being great cultural scene, right? We got food, we got nightlife, we have activities for everybody, regardless of the stage in life you are. We have 2 little girls. So everywhere we go, there's kidscapes, right? You go out to Dripping Springs to a brewery, there's going to be kidscapes, there's going to be food trucks. You go downtown, there's going to be all sorts of stuff, right? So regardless of where you are and stage of life, regardless of what you're interested in, there's probably something for you in Austin. And I think although that's becoming more the case post-pandemic across the states, there's only only a handful of cities like Austin that have really captured that and are building very rapidly. Couple that with the business environment, right? You have Texas, I think, which is a very business-friendly state, and then Austin specifically, which is becoming an innovation hub, right? Dubbed the Silicon Hills. Now you're hearing about Silicon Plains and Silicon Forest and a bunch of other places now.
Yeah, we've had that for 30 years. We've been the Silicon Hills, so we're not just slapping that on there and as a newcomer.
No, you're totally right. And I wish I could say I contributed more to that, but that was well before me. No, we're just, again, so thankful to be out here. And I think the combination of everything, right? The talent pool coming out, the amazing scene, both from a government perspective and from a corporate perspective coming in to Austin, I think created this great environment for Cruise to thrive as well.
All right, so let's talk about what Cruise does. When we say, it's an autonomous vehicle company, lots of things come to my mind, and there's a lot of things it can do, and there's a lot of things it can become once all this gets up to speed, because we're still in a little bit of a pioneer area when it comes to autonomous vehicles. What is Cruise? What is the mission? And where's the company going?
Sure. So Cruise is an autonomous vehicle service, right? So we offer ride hail, similar to other ride hail providers that you hear, Uber, Lyft, whatnot. We also offer delivery also similar to some of those other companies, but we do it with an autonomous vehicle, right? So when you order a Cruise, you can order it right from your phone. You can download the app off of the App Store. You order a vehicle just like you would a normal ride hail provider. It's going to communicate with you, and then it'll tell you, oh, hey, our vehicles are named, unlike people, Tom and Mike, they're usually named something a little bit different, like Brisket or Taco or Bluebonnet. So, Bluebonnet will show up and it'll say, hey, Mike, Bluebonnet's here to pick you up. And you can unlock the car right with your phone. You walk up to the vehicle, hop inside. The vehicle will start talking to you. Hey, please fasten your seatbelt, buckle up, let's get going, right? And it takes off. So very similar, in fact, the exact same product that you get with ride hail and with delivery, but being done with autonomous vehicles.
So for delivery, if I'm having something delivered, I have to go out and get it, though. They like the other companies that deliver will bring the food right to my front door. The car can't actually get on my porch.
Yes, that's correct. You probably don't want the car to drive on your porch. That would make a little bit of a mess. But you're right. There are some limitations. Of course, you do have to walk out to the vehicle to get it. That's true.
So let's talk about, you've been here in Austin, it's a relatively short amount of time. Is the service up and running? Is this something I can use like to get downtown tomorrow? Is there limited areas? What's going on right now in Austin?
Yeah, great question. And you're right. We have been up and running since the middle of December. So the way Cruise launches our markets is we start in a very small area during very specific times, right? So right now, our operating time is about 9 p.m. to 5:30 a.m., right? That's not the time that you or I might always be out and about, but there's
no, in fact, that's the time that I am. That's the time I am absolutely not out. That's like the anti-Tom hours of being out of the house.
No, and I very much respect that. That for me recently, that's been the time that I'm working. But to each is their own. So we operate during these specific times. Why? Well, it offers a unique environment for us, right? Typically at those hours, there's going to be less vehicles on the road. In our case, with like a Friday and Saturday night, it's actually really packed, right? It's a very busy, complex environment to drive in. But on the off hours, when the bars get out and things like that, it gets pretty dead out there, right? So it's a great environment and a great time for us to go and collect a ton of data on the roads, make sure our vehicles are operating as safe as possible. So again, we start very limited hours. Right now, if you look on the Cruise map, you open up the app, it'll show you exactly where we can operate. And for anyone that can visualize an Austin map, we're talking all the way over to Highway to Mopac, going north up to about Hyde Park area, covering the campus, going east over to 35, and then coming down to downtown, right? We're constantly looking to expand that map and expand those times. We're always guided by safety. So that means before we're going to open up anything, we're going to have a very strong safety case backed up in data that says, yep, we feel comfortable moving on to encompass more versions of the map. And in the near future, you'll see places like East Austin, eventually North Austin, South Austin, that will all be covered, and it'll cover more use cases. Right now, the service pretty naturally services those folks that are out in the bar scene that want to go grab late dinner downtown. Maybe they're coming from campus. Maybe they're coming from Clarksville or Old West Austin or Briker Woods, and they want to come downtown. Our service is great for that. And then if you're in and around downtown, you're already grabbing dinner in one spot and you want to go out to the bars, whatever the case might be, also a great use case for us.
So how many cars do you have in Austin so far?
Sure. So if you were to go by our lot, you'd see roughly 100 cars, right? So we're downtown. People will notice us. It's pretty hard to miss. There's an outdoor lot that a lot of the vehicles are parked at. And again, the vehicles are white Chevy Bolts that have the orange Cruise line on them. So pretty hard to notice, or pretty hard to miss, rather. And you also see all the sensors and the cameras and things like that. They're all over the vehicles.
Nice. All right. So let's talk about the future of autonomous vehicles. So this is obviously something we've been talking about for a long time. Obviously some of the cars that we own, Teslas and other stuff, can drive for you while you're on your way to work and stay in the lane and do things like that. We're still in the infancy of all of this, but do you see a day when I don't need a car? I live in Circle C. I want to go out, in the morning to meet with a member of the Austin Technology Council who's downtown, and I can schedule a car. It'll pick me up. It'll take me down there. I don't even need to own a car. Is that where we're going with all this?
I mean, I love thinking about that future where autonomous vehicles can be all that, right? Autonomous vehicles shouldn't be just the bar trip late at night. Now, to do that, right, we need a lot of vehicles. So we need a very heavy volume. And we need to make sure that we're in the right place at the right time. So you need a lot of vehicles. We got to build this up. We got to get the infrastructure built up to support that and whatnot. This is going to be something that's probably, not easy for a lot of folks to stomach. I think our generation, I'm going to say our generation very broadly here.
I'm going to step in. I am much older than you. I could probably be your father, but keep going.
No. I'm older than I look. So I think we all grew up with cars. I think if you look back in American history, like the idea of owning back to those like really old Corvette commercials or something, right? The idea of owning a vehicle was like the American dream.
Oh, my first car was a 66 Mustang in the early 80s. And, I love that. That was a beautiful car.
You hit the dream with your first car.
Yeah.
Right. That's it.
I never again have I had as cool of a car. That is true.
But I think we all grew up really loving this idea of owning your own car and driving it, taking great care of our cars and everything. And I think that's still something we hold today. But there's this, if we look at the statistics and we see where everything's going, like, I think we're going to look back in, 20 years or so and say, wow, the fact that was so dangerous. It was so dangerous, the fact that everyone was allowed to just drive around these 2,000 to 4,000 pound vehicles,
especially when you're 16.
Yeah, exactly. When you're tired, when you're drunk, when whatever the case might be, right? It's probably one of the most dangerous things we do today. And like you mentioned, especially when you're 16. So vehicular deaths are the number one cause of teenage deaths, right? That is it. Vehicular, collisions, that is number one cause of teenage deaths, right? If you look at it nationwide, it's the 11th leading cause of death. It's 40,000 deaths a year. That's insane. So when I think about, like, I have two little girls, and when I think about the things I can be controlling to keep them safe, transportation is one of them. And the idea of being able to leverage an autonomous vehicle is a really, really cool idea in my mind. I remember thinking that in addition for Uber, saying, wow, if we get enough Ubers on the road, maybe we won't even need, other cars. But of course, Uber needs a driver. In Cruise, you don't need a driver. There's no driver there, right? And when you don't have a driver, it changes everything. It changes the economics, it changes the environment, it changes the layout of the vehicle and the space you can use. It changes the experience. So when you jump into a Cruise, in one of our Bolt platforms, it feels like you're in a normal car. But when you jump in one of our Origins, which are the brand new vehicles, we have some in town right now we're doing some testing on, and I definitely encourage your users to check them out online on getcruise.com. Those Origins are like these giant, futuristic, relatively the size of a large SUV vehicles with sliding open doors, bench seats that face each other. And when you sit in on it, it feels luxurious because it's huge. You get in there, you or I, you look like you're much taller than me, but you or I would sit across from each other. We probably wouldn't even touch feet. There's that much space between us. So you get in there and you sit in it, and it feels luxurious because it's huge. And that experience is very different because now you're changing what it means to commute, right? There's no steering wheel, there's no pedals, there's no nothing like that in the Origin. You sit in it, and now you're getting somewhere. But while you're getting somewhere, you could be reading a book, you could be working, you could be listening to a podcast, you could be doing all sorts of things. So it really changes what transportation is. Instead of like as a means to get somewhere, transportation just becomes another place that you live your life, right? And we talked about, going out to, we took some friends out to Dripping Springs so that we had to hire a little bus to get us out there and have a bunch of fun. You could easily call up a Cruise and have them get them out there. So no one's drinking and driving or anything like that. So when I think about the future of transportation, and I think about Cruise, I think about enabling a new experience. I think about transforming transportation as something you have to do to get from point A to B to being just another part of your life where you can get things done.
Sure. Well, when I go to Houston or Dallas, and I, in addition to ATC, I was a professional speaker and trainer for 14 years. I still do some of that. When I go to Dallas or Houston, everybody's like, you fly? Yeah, because I can work on the plane. If I go to the airport, I can do an hour's worth of work for ATC, an hour on the plane. I can give my speech. I can come back. I can work a full day for the association because I didn't drive. If I drove, it's 3 hours each way, and I'm driving. So for me, I actually prefer to fly. So the idea of being in an autonomous car where someone else is driving for me is awesome. But here's my question. I live in South Austin. I live in Circle C. So I'm down at the bottom of Mopac. I go to the airport, a couple times a month. I can't call an Uber to get me here because I'll have to wait a half hour. And if I'm leaving for the airport at 5 a.m, drivers are canceling it. They don't want to come to me. And, if I schedule, the one time I said, well, I'll schedule my Uber, the driver canceled, because he didn't want to do a 4:30 run to Circle C. And it's like, all of a sudden I'd jump in my car, race to the airport. I barely got to my flight. Does this make it easier if you're a little bit more rural that you could schedule a driver and the car ain't going to cancel on you?
Yeah, potentially. Right now, again, to solve that, we just need volume. So we need to get a whole bunch of vehicles out there. We need to get the infrastructure built out as well to support those vehicles. But ultimately, we would love to be that resource for everybody, regardless of where you live. We would love to be able to service you. And I think when we talk about being able to service folks, we also talk about like accessibility. So when you look at the Origin platform, specifically for folks that might be in wheelchairs, right? The Origin platform is a very it's a very accessible platform. We have some different configurations. It's kind of modular, right? So you can easily put in a delivery platform. So you can put this piece into the Origin that allows it to store different things that people would order online. It shows up, you unlock a compartment, you pull out what you need. You can also retrofit it to help folks that need WAVE vehicles, wheelchair accessible vehicles. And that's really cool because right now, I remember dealing with this when I was working in previous companies, but helping out folks that need WAVE vehicles is very difficult. They have to call very special companies. It typically comes at a cost it's more expensive than a normal ride share or a transportation provider because it's very special equipment, right? Sometimes you need someone to lift you up or push you up into the vehicle. You may have to store your chair or whatever device you're using because you might not be able to lock it in. With the Origin, you should be able to ride right up the ramp, lock yourself in, close the door and you're good to go. You don't need to interact with anybody. It enables you to do it yourself. So when I think about accessibility, I think about all the different things that we'll be doing. Not only will we get eventually to down to Circle C where you are, I live over on the, I'll call it like central west side of Austin off of 2222. But we would eventually like to get all over the place. And then eventually talk intrastate. It'd be great to be able to take it and say, oh, I'm going to go down to, maybe I'm going to go down to San Antonio, or I'm going to go over to Arizona. My family's out in Arizona and Colorado. So maybe I'll go do a trip out there eventually. And I can, who knows what I can do at the time then. But we're a long ways away from there.
All right, so your second city was Austin, but now you're in some other places and about to open some new ones, I heard. What's going on? Where are your next cities?
That's right. So we started in SF. Phoenix is open as well. So Phoenix and Austin kind of open at the same time. I don't know which one's second or third. We'll have a debate about that later.
We'll say it's Austin because nobody from Phoenix is listening to this podcast.
There we go. We'll take it. And then we have Houston and Dallas that are coming online next.
Nice.
Very, very excited about that. We will be starting some what we call supervised operations in there very shortly. That's the part of when we go to prep a market and make sure it's ready for driverless operations, we do one component of that is called supervise. That's where we get a driver in the vehicle. The vehicle is actually operating in a driverless mode, but the driver's there able to provide notes and feedback on the ride to make sure that we're, again, delivering a good experience. But Houston and Dallas are coming up next. Very, very excited to get a bunch more Texans exposed to the cruise experience.
So, Mike, you yourself, your company's not based here, and you yourself are relatively new to Austin. I mean, you came a few years ago, and you're new to cruise this year. But what do you think about Austin? Why did you come here in the first place? Why did you decide this is a great place to bring your family? Are you here for the long haul? What are your thoughts about Austin now and in the future?
Yeah, I think so. I actually have a longer history with Austin that I didn't mention earlier. And that was my wife and I got married here back in 2013. So 10 years ago, we got married out here, right here downtown. And we picked Austin because it was a very central place in the U.S. We have a bunch of friends. We were in the military still at the time. So a bunch of people coming down from Fort Hood, and Austin's just very central. In addition, Austin's fun, right? And as I mentioned earlier, a great cultural scene. So I think I mentioned it earlier, but all the reasons why we decided to come down here make Austin a good place for not only for us, but that's why people continue to flock in. If you look at the stats for Austin in the last few years, I mean, even before the pandemic, Austin was beefing up really quickly, right? After the pandemic, it just put that on steroids. So you're seeing more and more people still come down because there's a lot of job opportunities. The housing, although it's been expensive in the last couple of years, it's still there, right? And then you have all these companies coming down. So great, a great way for people to live, fun environment, supportive of all different walks of life, and then the companies. So, why Austin? Again, I think the thriving cultural scene for folks, and then the business environment, which is Austin specifically, I think has done a really good job at supporting local businesses and pushing innovation. And I think that's really good. I mean, literally just earlier today, I was meeting up with the Texas Department of Transportation. So they were out here talking with us, and they loved talking about what we were doing. They're very excited about what we're doing. And of course, because we're going to be launching in Houston and in Dallas, they want to know what's going on. So we've worked very closely with the Chamber of Commerce, with a bunch of other local government organizations, and then some of the community organizations. We do the same thing in SF. In SF, we have a partnership with SF New Deal. We're providing rides to workers that are working really late at night. We're looking to do partnerships like that in Austin as well, right? Also, we have a partnership with USF, University of San Francisco, which makes up a huge percentage of the rides that we do out in San Francisco. And now we're, working with University of Texas as well. So we're really trying to get ourselves into the community, show that we care, that we are a part of the innovation tech scene within Austin, and work to partner with people to make Austin a continually thriving place, right? Continue to grow it and build it and get more folks and more companies come out here.
Nice. So your excitement level about your job is about as high as anybody I've ever interviewed, and your excitement level about Austin is equally as high. So you think the future looks good then?
I do. Now I got a caveat. I'm a glass half full type of person. So it's a rough day to find me without a smile on my face.
I was just going to say, you and I should go have a beer. We would just be happy together the whole time.
I love that, Tom. Awesome. You just tell me where, I'll be there.
So I ask everyone who comes on the show that I believe in community, collaboration, and conversation. I think more of those three things could solve all the problems in the world. Which one of those three resonates with you the most, and why?
I love that, Tom. And, having listened to multiple of your podcasts, I love hearing this part of it too, because it's a great question. I think that they're all very important, right? But the one I like the most is probably collaboration, because I think it kind of incorporates the other two as well, right? You got to have conversations is part of collaboration, and you got to have a community in order to collaborate as well. So I have a bias for action. I want to make sure we get stuff done. So collaboration to me is the action orientation, one of the three that you action there.
Nice. New question just started on the last episode. So this is the only second person to be asked this. Where do you bring out of town guests? When someone comes to visit you in Austin, where's the one place that you're like, you got to check out this locale, this restaurant, this site? What is it?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm a huge foodie. So I have about a list of 20 places maybe that I take you on a ride through.
What's your favorite?
If I were to choose one place, I'd actually probably go, instead of food, I'd probably say walk in Lady Bird Lake. Even though I don't live near it, I just think walking Lady Bird Lake, especially in the morning, because in the summertime, in the afternoon, it's a little bit too hot.
Yeah, it's in the morning, too hot for the rest of the summer. Yeah.
Already is. Yes. But taking a walk there, first of all, you get to see you see all of Austin culture, right? I think to keep Austin weird, I think it's changing a little bit, right? The environment's changing. There's a lot more new folks coming in town. Austin's gentrifying, right?
So yeah, we're not nearly. I've lived here 31 years. We're not weird anymore. You know, when there's a Starbucks on every corner, you're not that weird.
No, we're not that weird anymore. Now there's pockets of it. You can find it. You go to East Austin, you find some really niche places and some places with cool art and cool culture and music and things like that. But they're harder to find these days. Lady Bird Lake, I think, is one place where you can still get a sense of the entire Austin culture. You'll see people, folks like me with kids walking their kids. You'll see younger folks running around or biking. You'll see older folks walking around. You'll see artists out there playing music. So I really enjoyed the walk around Lady Bird Lake when it's not the middle of the summertime.
Nice. That's awesome. Well, Mike, it was such a pleasure to interview you here on the show. I hope our paths cross more often. Any final words for the listeners?
Tom, I just want to say, first of all, thank you so much. Really appreciate that. And for anyone that's listening, we really encourage you to come out, check out Cruise, ride one of our cars around. It's a very unique, novel experience. We're here to stay. We're here to grow. And we really would appreciate your feedback. So we welcome you in.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for being here on Austin Tech Connect. And thank you to everybody who tuned in and listened. You know what? Is your company a member of the Austin Technology Council? We need your support. We're a grassroots organization, but we cannot exist if the grassroots aren't participating. So we would welcome your company's involvement and have you add your voice to our tech community as we look towards the future. Come on, everyone. Join the Austin Technology Council right now.
Thanks for listening to the Austin Tech Connect podcast. Make sure your company is a member of the Austin Technology Council and add your voice to the future of our tech ecosystem in Central Texas.